Live interactive weather authority coverage will begin shortly. Your live interactive weather authority coverage will begin shortly.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday Eve. 3 days before Christmas. I feel like it's hard to believe it. Has this month flown by for anybody else, or is that just me? Maybe it always flies by in December, it seems like, but this year just felt like we just have flown through this month. Very excited for Christmas, not excited about the major storm that is moving in just 2 days before the holiday. Very unfortunate timing with that storm. Let's take a look at all of the alerts that we have in place across the country. This is really just a very impressive, very powerful, very rare storm. We just don't see such big storms like this. This is a once in every few year event here that we are going to be seeing with this big storm. Look at all the warnings we've got in place. We've got blizzard warnings in the northern plains. We've got freeze warnings and wind chill advisories all the way to the Florida Panhandle. We've got wind warnings and flood warnings and watches up here in New England. So the entire country east of the Rocky Mountains really getting affected by this storm, and we are no exception here in Maine. It looks like we're going to see some very big impacts with this storm. Today is quiet. Today is your prep day, a great day to get things ready, to get the generator gassed up, to charge those devices. Make sure you've got plenty of warm clothing as well in the off chance that you do lose power and are faced with very cold temperatures without power this weekend. So today, cloudy and on the cooler side, highs in the middle and upper 30s, fairly quiet. The winds will be very light out there today. Let's take a look at our highs. If you're traveling today, if you have plans or you have family coming into Maine from other parts of the country, today is not as bad as tomorrow will be, but there certainly will be some impacts out there. If you're flying to Chicago, Kansas City, anywhere in the Midwest, even in the Rocky Mountains, check out how cold. That is the high temperature today. 0 for the high in Kansas City, 3 in Denver, -8 in Bismarck, 33 in Chicago. All those places seeing blizzard conditions and heavy snow with rain falling further towards the east. So likely already going to start seeing those cancellations build up today. And tomorrow, I think we'll certainly see a whole lot more of them as well, with the storm arriving in New England tomorrow. Let's talk about threats with this storm. I think the biggest threat here, wind and outages, are by far the top of the list here when it comes to threats. This storm is multi-pronged, multifaceted. It will have many different threats with it, but the wind and the outage threat, I think, is the highest one. Rain threat is also high in terms of a few inches of rain falling on top of snowpack, leading to flooding as well. That could certainly be a big problem as we head into the day tomorrow. Unfortunately for us, wintertime snow fans and Christmas fans, not a lot of snow to come with this system, unfortunately. There will be some, but it just won't be a lot. And overall, most of us won't see any accumulation. So if you're just joining us, of course, we're tracking a major storm tomorrow that is set to bring big impacts to Maine. We're expecting widespread power outages with this storm. I'll break down the timing coming up here in just a second. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them at any time, and I'll be happy to answer them. All right, let's talk about warnings that we have in place. A high wind warning in place for pretty much the entire state of Maine. That goes through late Friday night for gusts up to 65 miles per hour. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. This is a top tier event here. We don't really get many of these. The last comparable one was back in October of 2017. So it's been a few years since we have seen an event of this caliber, of this strength. And it looks like we're going to see a very powerful event tomorrow. So gusts up to 65 miles per hour. That would certainly be enough to cause widespread outages across the state. So we'll have to be very closely watching that. I would expect the outage numbers to really start climbing heading into tomorrow morning. We also have a flood watch in place for much of the state that goes through Saturday morning. 1 to 3 inches of rain expected, locally higher amounts in the mountains that could easily lead to some river and stream flooding, especially in those sheltered valleys of the mountains where all the water gets funneled down there. Outside of the mountains, there's also a flood threat. We're still under that flood watch. I just think it's a little bit lower because A, there's less snow on the ground, and we're also not dealing with the terrain, and we're not going to get any real snow here at the coastline. There will be, I would still think there would be some flooding here in coastal and southern Maine, but I think the bigger threat here is the wind and the outage threat as well. Not the only kind of flooding we're going to see with this storm. A coastal flood watch in place for the mid-coast down to the New Hampshire border. We're likely to see overwash at the coastline. Moderate coastal flooding is forecast at the Portland gauge, and in fact, many of the gauges from the mid-coast down to the New Hampshire state line. We've got high tide coming up tomorrow at 10:15 a.m., and during that high tide, we will likely see some coastal flooding. So just be prepared, be aware of that. If you live somewhere where there's a coastal road that tends to flood, or your property tends to get coastal flooding, I would expect to see that tomorrow with this very powerful storm, that onshore, very strong wind we are expecting. All right, let's track things out here. Clouds are going to be with us through the day today. Rain and snow will begin after midnight tonight. Snow for inland areas, even in places like Lewiston, Freiburg, Augusta. Could see a little snow to start before switching over to rain. So a quick coating of snow around midnight tonight can't be ruled out, but it'll likely be gone by the time you wake up on Friday morning because we'll switch over to rain. So here we are, 11 p.m. or midnight or so. Winds will be picking up at this time. We'll start to see a few showers beginning. Things really ramp up in a big way, though, as we head towards the morning hours. Let's stop things at 7:30 a.m. At this point, this is when we are in the thick of it. I've been highlighting the 5 a.m. or so to about 2 to 3 p.m. or so time frame for the worst conditions tomorrow. So at 7:30 or so, we will be in the thick of it with very heavy rain, very strong winds at this time. Possibly some snow falling in the mountains as well, although that is quickly going to switch over to rain for the most part here. But very strong winds, heavy rain tomorrow, mild temperatures as well. We're warming up into the 50s tomorrow afternoon with this storm. We are definitely on the warmer side of this storm. So like I mentioned, the rain, the wind, the worst of it continuing through about 2 or 3 p.m. or so. It's not done yet. We're going to see a little bit of a lull, and then the Arctic cold front itself that is bringing all that cold air to the deep south reaches us by tomorrow evening. So here we are, 7:30 p.m., and while the worst of the winds and certainly the rain will be out of here by this point, as that front moves into the state, we'll likely see the winds ramp back up once again, and we can also see some flurries and maybe a brief snow squall or two. I think the bigger concern is the dramatic plummet in temperatures from the 50s to the teens in just a matter of hours. That could lead to flash freezing, especially with any standing water left on the roads. Puddles could quickly freeze up out there, leading to slick spots. And if we get a coating of snow on top of that in some parts of the area, that could just make things even more icy for us here. So we'll see things really get cold as we head into Christmas Eve morning. Here we are, Christmas Eve at 8 in the morning, temperatures in the single digits and low teens, still blustery out there. So we'll be feeling like the single digits both below and above zero. It's really going to be quite cold out there on Christmas Eve, and quite the shock to the system after 50s on Friday. So such a dynamic storm, so many different factors with it, a lot going on tomorrow. A great day to just hunker down and stay safe. That would be what I would recommend to do tomorrow. So let's talk about winds are really going to ramp up after midnight tonight. Tomorrow morning is when we'll really start to see those strong gusts gusting up to 55 to 60 miles per hour pretty quickly out there tomorrow morning. The winds will continue through about lunchtime into the early afternoon hours, beginning to die down a bit after that. So here we are at 12:30. Look at that 59 mile per hour wind gust in Portland, 60 plus not out of the question here in the Portland area. And that will certainly lead to widespread wind damage and power outages as well. This is a very significant event. I do want to keep highlighting that because this is not just a typical wind and rain event. This is something that will be widespread and very impactful across the state and could leave many of us, unfortunately, without power as we head into the Christmas weekend. A total Grinch storm, of course. No one likes to see these things right before the Christmas holiday, especially. The winds do taper off a bit as we head towards the mid to late afternoon. They'll pick back up once again as the Arctic cold front sweeps in the evening hours, and then remaining just blustery but not damaging as we head into Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve, probably clearing skies, cold and very windy out there, but not damaging. So the damaging winds really confined tomorrow from about 5 a.m. or so all the way through about 2 or 3 p.m. And then we should begin to see improvements. It'll still be windy though, so that can make restoring power on the difficult side as we head into Christmas Eve. So rain here, we're expecting 1 to 3 inches across the state, if not higher amounts in the mountains. A little bullseye there has been showing up as the moisture runs into the mountains and is essentially wrung out. You can think of it that way. And that's why the flooding concern is so high. Of course, if you were anywhere in Maine last weekend or last Friday, Saturday, or if you were in the mountains, you know that they got a lot of snow. There's 20 to 30 inches on the ground up there. And with rain falling on top of that, that is why the flood concern is so high with this storm, because of course it'll get mild and the rain will fall on the snow. So hopefully we can limit how warm we get in the mountains. If we can stay below about 40, 45 degrees, that will really help to limit a lot of the melting. So hopefully that will happen. But if we get above 50 degrees or so in the mountains, we could be talking about a big flood threat here. All right, let's talk about the dramatic temperature drop that we are likely to see. We'll see temperatures warming up into the 50s by the mid to late morning hours. And then as we head towards the afternoon, staying in the 50s, watch how dramatic this plummet in temperatures is. I just want to show you guys this is something that we do not see very often, at least at this extreme level. All right, here we go. Watch that whoosh of cold air. Wow. We are going to drop our temperatures from the 50s to the 20s and teens in a matter of hours. And that's why the flash freezing risk is so high here with this storm. Very, very impressive. This is not something you get too often in New England, such an extreme temperature drop in just a few minutes. I can think of one other time where we had something similar to this. It was over the summer. If you remember, in August, we had a high of 96 in Portland, and then we plummeted into the 50s. This is somewhat similar to that, although, of course, we're going from the 50s to the teens and 20s. Here we are on Christmas Eve morning, temperatures in the teens. It's still windy and still very, very cold out there. All right, Christmas Day, you've got plans. Hopefully power will be restored for the most part by this point, because Christmas Day overall is looking a lot calmer. We'll see winds much lighter, and we'll see highs in the mid-20s with a good amount of sunshine. And so that we, at least Christmas itself, not looking too bad. Unfortunately, not going to be a white one for many of us, but it will at least be feeling like Christmas. Very cold out there Christmas Day. A quick look at the 7-day forecast. Wind and rain arrive tomorrow, a very impactful day. So quick rundown of the threats one more time before I sign things off here. Of course, the wind threat is very high. The power outage threat is very high. We can see gusts up to 65 miles per hour. 1 to 3 inches of rain with this storm will lead to flooding, especially in the mountains where there's 20 to 30 inches of snow on the ground. And then, of course, there's the coastal flood threat and the threat of a flash freeze later on in the evening as temperatures plummet as well. So a multifaceted storm, as I've been saying, a lot of different threats with this one. Stick with us here. We'll keep you updated through the day. Tomorrow we'll be tracking those wind gusts tomorrow morning. Johnny will be live as well tomorrow on Good Day Maine. Along the coastline somewhere, I'm sure the conditions will get pretty wild out there. So tune in tomorrow morning, and a great time to hunker down. Make sure those devices are charged. Make sure you've got blankets to stay warm over the weekend, just in case you do end up losing power for a couple days. And check on the elderly in your neighborhood as well, in case your whole neighborhood does end up losing power. So we're cold through Christmas Day. Staying chilly into next week, but overall on the calmer side. Inland towns as well. Rain and wind with some mountain snow, quickly changing over to rain tomorrow. Highs in the 50s. Frigid cold for Christmas Eve, especially with the winds. Highs only in the low 20s or even upper teens. And then a little bit better on Christmas Day with calmer winds and highs in the lower 20s. So I hope everybody has a great day. If you have any questions before I sign off here, just drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And even if the live has ended, I will go through and I'll look at them. So if you have any comments or questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you. So stay safe out there, everybody. I will do another one of these tomorrow morning, and hopefully we can keep those power outages to a minimum for Christmas time. Have a great weekend or a great rest of your day, everybody, and happy holidays.
This has been live interactive Weather Authority coverage from CBS 13